Chapter 16, Pain and Protest, 1963 to 1965. A few weeks after the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, tragedy struck again. 4 girls were killed in Birmingham, Alabama. Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, Carol Denise McNair, Addie Mae Collins. White supremacists and members of the KKK bombed their church. Again, the nation and the world watched. Outrage spread. Angela Davis, who grew up in Birmingham, was a college student studying in Europe when she heard the news. Her family had been close friends with the Robertson family. She lived in the same neighborhood as the Wesley family. Davis did not see this moment as a one-off incident. The KKK bombed her neighborhood so often that it was nicknamed Dynamite Hill. She had grown up fully aware of American racism and its deadly potential. All she could do was use the news of this tragedy as fuel to keep fighting. The outrage over the murder of 4 little girls at a church was so great that the government was forced to take action. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed into legislation. But what did it really mean? On paper, it made it a law that discrimination on the basis of race was illegal. Malcolm X spoke out not against the bill, but about the likelihood of the law actually ever being enforced. Angela Davis felt the same way. Because laws alone have never been powerful enough to create freedom for all. Who was going to make sure the laws would be followed if the law, lawmakers, and law enforcers were all racist? Today, activist Angela Davis reminds us, freedom is a constant struggle. That it takes more than laws to bring about freedom for all. It takes people power to imagine and build a movement for all humanity. Police brutality continued. The KKK continued. Job, housing, and education discrimination continued. Black political movements were not satisfied with what the government was doing for black people, so protests continued. But without power, all the protesting in the world meant nothing. So there was a shift from fighting for civil rights to fighting for freedom. The difference between the two is simple. One is a fight for fairness, the other a right to live. And as they fought for the right to live, death would strike again. This time, Malcolm X was assassinated. His death rocked his black anti-racist followers. The media portrayed him as a messenger of hate. But Malcolm's autobiography, published after his death, showed that Malcolm X was for truth, not hate. His message to black people was about pride and unity. His autobiography would become one of the most important books in American history. Dr. King and Malcolm X met only once, but Dr. King acknowledged that though they had different methods, much like Du Bois and Washington and Du Bois and Garvey, they really wanted the same thing: freedom. After the Civil Rights Act, which Malcolm distrusted, came the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And what did it cause? White rage and resistance. However, the Voting Rights Act would become the most effective piece of anti-racist legislation ever passed by the Congress of the United States of America. Malcolm X was gone, but not forgotten. His words continued to feel like an armor of protection from anti-blackness for young black activists, and for many, they still do.